Hi, this is Annie, my dog. Annie's very old. A lot of people like to make videos of their dog's last best day. When a dog's time comes, they do all the fun things the dog likes to do and all the treats and stuff the dog likes to do. But when a dog gets old, sometimes, well, that last best day already happened. They can't do a lot of the fun things they used to do, and that's kind of sad. But Annie's had a lot of good days and a lot of crazy fun stuff that she's done. Um, Annie is a dog that's gone on many adventures, but just doesn't know it because she's a dog and they don't really understand the concept of adventures like we do. But I just want to talk about Annie and talk about all the cool stuff she's done and how that she's been a really great dog. And yeah, that's what we're going to talk about. Now, Annie was born November 7th, 2003. However, we did not get her to 2008. She was an American Kennel Club, red miniature dachshund. She was, I guess, bred for that. We never really cared about that, but we did get her papers and it did give us some information. I found out that her full name originally was Annie Daisy Bolger of Newberry. Her father was C.J. Brown and her mom was Sweet Chocolate Sophia. Okay. We just call her Annie or Annie Lou. So that's that's her name as far as she's concerned and as far as we're concerned. Right, Annie? Fair enough. Um, we didn't get here till 2008. A couple with a young daughter had her. Life circumstances changed for them. They were no longer able to keep Annie. And that's a lot of times people, there's a lot of judgment to dog owners that where situation changes for them. Like a dog is a forever choice. With that said, I do think we should have compassion to people that have situations change. I mean, we had a situation where finances got real bad and we had to find a place to live, and having, fortunately we had small dogs, so we were able to find an apartment that we could afford, but some people can't. And that's why a lot of times you see like homeless people with dogs. I mean, that's not the only reason, but because yeah, sometimes they just can't afford to live in places that allow bigger dogs, or dogs that also they don't. So that's why I try to not to give judgment on people that have to get rid of their dogs for whatever reason, whether they find out their allergies or their set. So they couldn't keep her, even though they were great owners. Sure, they weren't able to keep her, so that's why we got her. We had a dog, Maddie, who was quite a cantankerous little dog, another miniature dachshund, and Annie had separation anxiety. That they said that she was just very lonely, especially when they would go to work and stuff, and their little child wasn't old enough to really play with the dog too well. But we're gonna put you down here, Annie. I don't make sure you're comfortable. So we there's actually a lady that went to my wife's alma mater for graduate school, and we found out about it. So she found out about Annie and said, "Well, we'll take Annie. We've got a dog ourselves, another miniature dachshund ourselves. So maybe maybe that could be like Annie's buddy." And that ended up being the case for many years. Annie's anxiety was real bad when we first started. That I remember we lived in a condo, which is, we call it a townhome, but it's really just a glorified condo. I ran to go get the mail. Probably took me maybe 30 seconds to go to the mailbox and back. In that time, Annie was waiting right at the front door in a puddle of pee because she had got so nervous that I'd left just to get the mail. That she'd already peed there. That eventually abated, that behavior and stuff, as she got to closer to Maddie, who was, like I said, her constant companion, her constant buddy. Annie and Maddie were buddies, but they were very different. Maddie at a good healthy weight was 10 pounds. Annie at her healthy weight was a little heavier. It was 12 pounds, which doesn't seem like a big difference, but when you're a miniature dachshund, that's like me gaining 50 pounds. So there's a bit of a difference. And Annie was a slightly bigger dog, but again, yeah, a quarter inch is like a half a foot, compared to us. But Annie was a more timid one. Maddie had Napoleon complex. She thought she was the biggest, toughest dog ever. We rarely had people over because she barked all the time. It wasn't until she got much older that she stopped barking as much, mainly because she couldn't hear or see people. But Annie would only bark usually in reference to like, oh, Maddie's barking, I better bark too. So Maddie's definitely the leader, but Annie was was a little different. Maddie was super loyal. She was super protective, especially my wife Amy. Annie's a lover, not a fighter. For the most part, she's been that way. I used to say that she had no loyalty. That like I could give her to anybody and she would just go with you and love you. And that's the truth. She's very quick to warm up to people. She was always good around children. She's always good around other people. Not sometimes other dogs, but usually for the most part, she was definitely a people dog. That was always kind of a fun thing about Annie. It's about Annie versus Maddie. Though we love Maddie, we could actually like have people around Annie, and that was a nice thing. So that was a different thing about Annie. But I want to talk about Annie's many adventures. This might be hard to believe, but Annie here is a published model, superhero, competitive athlete, and a cross-country traveler. So she's lived quite the life. And I want to go into a couple of those fun adventures she's been on. Now, one of the great things about Annie versus Maddie that we notice is Annie just being slightly longer. She had much more stamina, was more physically able to go on longer walks. Maddie, like we'd go around the block and she was done for the day. Annie, on the other hand, could go honestly for a couple miles at times, especially when she was younger. With that said, we actually signed up to do the Seattle Walk for Animals for the Seattle Humane Society several years, and in fact, Annie's got quite a collection of bandanas that she got for doing the walk. And it was a 5K or 3-mile walk, and she didn't make the whole 5K. I'd pick her up and have to carry her for a little while, but she just about could do it. Not so much now. I mean, the last time I gave her a walk, it was just up and down the driveway. That became her walk, and even that hasn't been for many months. But at one point in time, Annie could just walk, and a lot of humanitarian work that she did through that. Not humanitarian for humans, but humane, for Seattle Humane Society. Annie's not impressed with the pun.
Oh my word. Annie, look at you. You're like a savage. To rip that bow off.
One of the quirks about Annie that was just found hilarious was we didn't realize it till that Christmas after we got her, but she liked to open presents. We started opening presents, and she's like starting to attack the wrapping paper. It was like one of the craziest, funniest things I've ever seen a dog do. I mean, usually like Maddie didn't seem to care because none of it was for her, but Annie just loved unwrapping presents. So we'd start unwrapping some. She'd go and take a bite of that wrapping paper and rip it up open with you. So that was one of the funnest things little quirks to do. So gift giving time was always made easier with Annie.
She's like, this is so great. Yeah, you got it.
Well, Coma Plaza is literally going to the dogs. Want to give you a live look outside right now at the 18th annual Kenton Allen Wiener Dog Race. Look at that. They're all ready to go for what for sure will be a fun race. It'll be fun to watch. We'll show you all that and much more coming up next.
Now, I said Annie's a competitive athlete, and that's a bit of a stretch, specifically the competitive part. For several years in a row, I signed her up at my work to do the Wiener Dog races. They had a Wiener Dog qualifying race that Star 101.5 put on. But I signed her up because she did great with crowds and everything, and it was at work, so it was really easy. I would just bring Andy to work, and it actually worked out because all my coworkers seemed to love her because she would just hang out with them and she just loves everybody. The problem is, despite her ability to run back then and maybe even beat some of those dogs, she just didn't. Why? Because, and I tried both ways. I tried being at the starting end. I tried being on the finishing end. I would have a coworker that Annie would just warm up to within seconds, hold her and try to get her to run to me, but she wouldn't, because why run away from people when there's all these nice fun people around the starting line? Sure, there's nice people down at the finish line, but she'd rather walk around and talk and sniff and love and cuddle with all the people at the start line. So she the furthest she ever got was about 5 feet, and then she'd turn back around and walk away. In fact, If anything, she actually probably has the record for negative races, as she would sometimes walk the exact opposite way. I signed her up several years and, again, never finished a race ever. She didn't make it on TV, though, so that makes her a star.
But we want to wiggle around and show you the scene again, just to show you what things are still looking like out here. Couple more minutes to go until the big race kicks off, but a lot of people are here and they're having a great time, so plenty of fun for a lot of folks. Family friendly event out here, right here down in Como Plaza, and as you know, we'll keep watching it, and as you can see, some of them are already getting a couple laps in before we get prepared for the big race.
Now, Annie, of course, was a superhero and a published model. I know it sounds pretty crazy, but it's actually very true. In fact, I've got the magazine in which she was in. It's Wizard magazine now. Wizard, of course, now does conventions, or did, or whatever, but before they used to do a magazine, every year they do a costume contest that I tried to get in myself several years, but never did, at least not in my own costume. Before Annie before we had Annie, I actually dressed up our older dog, Maddie, as Iron Weenie. And she was actually in Toy Fair magazine first, Maddie was. However, when we got Annie, well, you can't have Iron Weenie without her best buddy, War Weenie. She made it into a magazine. There's, as you see, War Weenie there. The fine staff at Wizard had a funny thing, says, "My associate and I are currently engineering a massive poop on your bed." Classy. All right. To be fair, in her old age, Annie actually has pooped and peed in our bed, so that was slightly accurate, just the timing was off. Annie, here's her Iron Weenie, her War Weenie costume after, has been dressed up a lot, and I like dressing her up. She hates it. She does not like to be dressed up. She's just very passive, and so she just kind of lets you do it. We're not gonna do it anymore. No more dressing up, okay? No more dressing up. There you go. But thanks to both Maddie and Annie's, I've become a published dog costume designer, so I can put that on my repertoire for what it's worth. Annie's also been a cross-country traveler, as we've traveled between her home state where we lived in Washington State, as well as our home state of Illinois. She's been, I was gonna say planes, trains, and automobiles, but I don't, planes, trains, and automobiles, but I think she's only been on planes and automobiles. I don't think she's, have you been on a train? I don't know, at least not very much. We've traveled by car both ways, or by vehicle rather, both ways. We've also flown both ways with Annie. When we first got her, she was able to fit in the same carrier with Maddie, but eventually we had to put them in two different ones because I think they needed more space. One funny time, you've heard of snakes on a plane. Well, we had wieners on a plane. My wife and I both, each took a dog in a carrier, and we put them under our seats because that's, we're not gonna put up in the, up above. But I unzipped it a little bit so she could stick her head out, just because it kind of calmed her nerves. By that time, Maddie was like just super old and didn't care, and I think we each gave a half a Benadryl to kind of calm him down. But Annie, being the more timid one, she was a little more worried about it. But I forgot that I left it unzipped slightly, the carrier, and my wife hates this about me, but I'm able to fall asleep on a plane like that. She's always up the entire time. I mean, we start to, I'll be asleep before we even get off, before takeoff sometimes. In any case, my wife, her, seatmate, we weren't sitting next to each other because we were cheap and we just got the cheapest tickets we could get. And her seatmate, or whatever you want to call it, said, "There's a dog on the plane." And she's like, "What?" And she looks down and see if it's Maddie. Nope, Maddie's still in there. But then lo and behold, right underneath her chair comes Annie Lou. Annie Lou had escaped from me and gone up underneath people's chairs. Unfortunately, gone to where my wife was. I think just more by chance, anything else. And so my wife comes over and hands me Annie. I'm like, "What the?" Wiener's on a plane. But Annie got old. She went on a lot of many adventures, but she got old over the years, as dogs have a tendency to do if they live that long. Right now she's got that almost completely white face and white arms and legs. I guess legs and legs. But when we got her back when she was 4 years old, she was just the deepest, rich brown that we'd ever seen on a dog. She had the little black in her scruff there, but and that she was just like such a full, rich brown dog. They call these red dachshunds. But now, after all these years, we've seen her get whiter and whiter to the point where she's nearly completely white. Gray faced, frosty faced dog. As a dog owner, if you're going to be a dog owner, you should do everything to strive to give your dog a good long life. But if you can only choose one of those options, good or long, pick a good life. Long life, that's more for us, because dogs come in and we live longer than dogs. Having a dog live as long as possible, that's nice, but a lot of that's for you. That's so you can have as much of your life with that dog as much as possible. But when you think about it, a dog's life is completely with you, so that they're with you from the beginning. We're with them from the beginning of their life, and we're going to be with them to the end of their life, barring things changing. So I hope I gave Annie a good life. She's still a very loving dog. She just can't hear or see very well. She can't stand up a lot of the times. She can't walk a lot of the times. Mobility is they give us a quality of life scale, and one of the things you gotta rate you when you're kind of depending on how your dog's doing is mobility, and she's she can't even stand up half the time, even when she's eating. Yeah. So after all these many adventures, I'm gonna make sure Annie's had a good life. And I had my mom make her a nice box. I decided I'm gonna bury her behind the garage. The reason I say behind the garage, I've thought about this. My wife and I might eventually sell this house, and behind the garage is by the alleyway. So it's a grassed over area, but I'd be able to come visit her after we sell the house. I don't have to walk through someone's backyard. I can just walk through the alley and just. So that's where Annie is. Annie the dog that went on many adventures. So goodbye, Annie. Thanks for being such a good dog. There won't be any more struggles anymore. I hope you have a good life. I hope you had a good life. To Annie, the dog that went on many adventures and didn't know it.